Last week, we had some questions about how to eyeball serving sizes. So let's take a look at some tips on how to do that. Use your hand for reference, and your palm is about the size of one serving of meat, fish, or poultry, which is about 3 to 4 ounces. Your thumbnail is about the size of 1 teaspoon, which you can use as reference for a portion of fats like mayonnaise and butter. The size of your thumb is equivalent to about 1 or 2 tablespoons, which is how large a serving of nut butter should be. Your fist is equivalent to the size of 1 cup, which is the size of a serving of fruits and vegetables. 1 cupped hand is about half of a cup, which is the size of a serving of grains, like pasta or rice. So if you're trying to figure out how much to be serving yourself, use your hand as an easy reference. Now, in previous classes, we talked about how to add fruits and vegetables to protein-heavy meals in order to make our plates look like the DPH's My Plate. Today, we're going to cover some plant-based proteins. So first of all, animal meat contains what is called complete proteins. This means that animal meats contain all the essential amino acids or protein building blocks that our body needs. Plant proteins are not complete proteins, but they can be used in combinations to cover the variety of amino acids that we need. For example, rice and beans is a key combination because the key amino acids that are not found in rice are found in beans, and vice versa. Some plant proteins that you can add or substitute into your diet are beans, lentils, peas, or chickpeas. Beans are classified as legumes and can grow in pods or capsules that develop from flowers. These differ from green beans, where you can eat the entire pod. Since beans are offered dry, canned, or frozen, they can fit into any budget. Beans contain amino acids, or protein building blocks. And while most plant-based proteins are incomplete proteins, soybeans contain all 9 essential amino acids. This marks fresh soybeans, soy milk, and tofu as all great protein alternatives. Beans are also lower in saturated fat than most animal proteins, which can help lower your blood cholesterol levels. Additionally, they contain folate, which is an essential nutrient for making healthy red blood cells. Lentils are another member of the legume family. They are small with a lens-like shape. The main difference between lentils and beans is that lentils contain more fiber. Dietary fiber is a type of carbohydrate that cannot be broken down to digestible sugar molecules. This aids our digestion of other materials and our management of blood sugar and cholesterol. Lentils can be found in mainly 3 varieties: brown, green, and red. Brown lentils are the cheapest and are a great addition to soup, while green lentils are usually paired with salad. Finally, red lentils cook quickly and lose shape when soft, so they can easily be added to any dish for a boost of protein. Since lentils don't need to be pre-soaked before cooking like beans do, they are a good option for quick meals. Red lentils cook for about 20 minutes, green lentils for about 30, and brown lentils for about an hour. Peas are typically small and round, growing inside seed pods. Green beans specifically are high in starch, which is a complex carbohydrate that is the main source of energy for the human body. Some other starchy vegetables are potatoes and corn. Starchy vegetables are generally higher in carbs and calories compared to non-starchy vegetables like broccoli or eggplant. Chickpeas, also known as garbanzo beans, have a buttery flavor and creamy texture that makes them a great addition to tons of dishes. You can easily add them into soups, blend them to make hummus, or grind them to make plant-based meatballs. Even the liquid that chickpeas are canned with is useful. The thick water is called aquafaba and contains a mixture of starch and protein. This liquid is a great replacement for eggs in recipes. 1 tablespoon of aquafaba is the equivalent of 1 egg yolk. 2 tablespoons equals 1 egg white, and 3 tablespoons equals 1 whole egg. Chickpeas are also high in iron, which is a mineral that is important for the proper function of hemoglobin, a protein that is used to transport oxygen in your blood. Most of these legumes can be found in both canned and a dried version, so let's compare the two for a second. Dried and canned beans are both cheap alternatives to animal protein, but dried beans are the most cost-effective between the two. For example, dried pinto beans are generally 15 cents per serving, while canned pinto beans are 34 cents per serving. But if you're looking for the most convenient option, go with canned beans. They simply need to be drained, rinsed, and added to your recipe. Some argue that cooked dry beans have a better texture and more flavor than their canned versions. So it's really up to your personal preference on which you would rather choose. But let's take a look at how to prepare some dried beans. Step number 1 is to soak your beans the night before you cook them. Put your beans into a pot and cover them with a few inches of water and throw the whole pot into your fridge overnight. Step number 2 is drain the water. So you want to make sure to drain the water that the beans were soaking in and then fully cover the beans with a few inches of fresh water. Then you'll bring the water up to a simmer, but avoid boiling the water. If the water is too hot, then the beans can start to fall apart. Step number 3 is to add some aromatics. So this step is where you can start flavoring your beans with onions, garlic, chilies, or even herbs. This allows your beans to start absorbing these flavors, but if you're going to simply be adding your beans into a different recipe, you can just skip this step because you'll probably be imparting plenty of flavor if you're adding it into soups or other things like that. Step number 4 is to allow your beans to simmer for 30 minutes to an hour until you're easily able to bite through them. If you're seasoning your beans now, taste as you go and allow them to sit for about half an hour before eating so they're able to absorb all of the different seasonings and flavors. Try going through the Meatless Monday worksheet with your family or housemates and make 3 meatless meals that you could execute together. Make sure to fill out all sections of My Plate on the diagrams, including the fruit, vegetable, and grain sections. The food safety tip that we're going to cover today is separating raw meats from other foods. But even beyond the simple tip is the topic of cross-contamination. Cross-contamination refers to how germs can be spread from one food product to another. This is especially true when handling raw meat, poultry, and seafood. So make sure to keep those foods and their juices away from fresh fruits, vegetables, and ready-to-eat foods. There are typically 2 types of cross-contamination. Direct contamination is when food is contaminated by germs from other foods. This occurs when raw foods or their juices touch foods that have already been cooked. Some examples of this type of cross-contamination are juices dripping from raw meat stored on top shelves of the fridge onto cooked vegetables placed on a lower shelf, or mixing fresh foods with leftover foods such as salads. The second type of cross-contamination is indirect. Indirect contamination occurs if you use unwashed or poorly washed hands. Also, germs can spread between kitchen equipment, utensils, or cutting boards to food. Some examples of indirect contamination are using unclean equipment, such as can openers or utensils to prepare food, using the same cutting board and knife when cutting different types of foods, such as cutting raw chicken, followed by salad preparation. Despite the variety of ways that cross-contamination can occur, there are a few ways that we can avoid it. One way is to wash your hands between handling different foods. Number 2, separate raw meat, poultry, and seafood from other foods in your grocery shopping cart and in your fridge. Number 3, use a different cutting board for raw meat, poultry, and seafood products. Number 4, always wash cutting boards, dishes, and kitchen tools with hot, soapy water after they come in contact with raw meat, poultry, seafood, eggs, and unwashed fresh produce. Number 5, place cooked food on a clean plate. If you put cooked food on an unwashed plate that held raw food, like meat, poultry, or seafood, germs from the raw food could contaminate your cooked food. Next, we're going to go over different types of food measurements. In American recipes, we often use units of teaspoons, tablespoons, cups, and ounces to measure our ingredients. But in stores, you can find that canned goods are measured in ounces, while dry goods are measured in pounds. The abbreviation for teaspoon is TSP, while the abbreviation for tablespoon is TBSP. Don't get these two mixed up, or you might end up with a very strange tasting dish. Some other measurements are a pinch and a dash. These terms seem pretty vague, but a tip to keep in mind is that the amount that you can pick up with your thumb, index finger, and middle finger is a pinch. This is about 1/8 of a teaspoon. A dash is less than a pinch, so try using just your thumb and your index finger. Next, we are going to cover what sautéing is. Sautéing is cooking foods that are usually cut into small pieces over medium or high heat in a non-stick skillet to add color, flavor, and texture. Variations are draw sauté or low-fat sauté. Draw sauté means that there is no added oil, while low-fat sauté means that there's little added oil. A classic sauté will have as much as 1/8 of an inch of oil in the pan. Now that we've covered what sautéing is, we're going to go over a few steps on how to sauté your vegetables. Step number 1 is to wash and pat dry the vegetables using a clean towel or paper towels. Step number 2 is to cut the vegetables to the size following the recipe directions. Step number 3 is place the skillet on the stove and set the burner to a medium or high temperature and let it heat up. Step number 4, add oil or if desired, draw sauté. If you are using oil, you don't need to use a lot. You just want enough to barely coat the bottom of the pan. Step number 5, drop the vegetables into the skillet. To avoid having some vegetables end up overcooked and others end up undercooked, you should add the vegetables in reverse order of their cooking time. For example, add carrots first since they take longer to cook, and snap peas last since they cook quickly. You could also cut smaller pieces of the vegetables that take longer to cook, and larger pieces of those that cook more quickly. Some produce with long cooking times are carrots, onions, and potatoes. Some with medium cooking times are broccoli and bell peppers. Produce with short cooking times are mushrooms and tomatoes. And finally, spinach and other greens have extremely short cooking times, so make sure that you add those last. Step number 6, sprinkle seasonings following your recipe's directions. Step number 7, stir occasionally and continue to cook until the vegetables are tender. This should take about 3 to 5 minutes. Finally, step number 8 is to serve your food and enjoy. Although we specifically mentioned using non-stick pans, steel pans are better for cooking foods at high temperatures. Non-stick pans can actually only handle low heat. If using non-stick pans to cook high-heat foods, you could possibly burn the pan faster. Usually, non-stick pans have a warranty of 1 to 2 years, while steel pans usually have a lifetime warranty. Next up is our weekly Filipino dance movement led by one of our HEAL interns.
Hi, I'm Sarang. I'm a current UCLA student, and I'm involved with the Samahang Filipino Cultural Night. I'm also an intern for the Asian Pacific Islander Forward Movement, specifically with the HEAL Project. Today, I'm going to be teaching you about Silong Saganding. Silong Saganding is a dance that comes from the southern region of the Philippines, Mindanao. So the name Silong Saganding translates to following the gandangan. The gandangan is the collection of 4 gongs that you'll hear in the music. Since the Silong Saganding movements that I'm going to show you today only use the arms, wrists, and hands, This is the perfect dance to practice if you have a small space, like if you live in an apartment or your walls are thin and you don't want to bother your neighbors by stomping your feet. This is also a great dance to practice if you still want to get some movement, some exercise in, but it's hot outside. We want to get our forearm muscles as well as our wrists ready by stretching. So I'm going to start by sticking out one of my arms, and then I'm going to bend my hand so that I'm looking at the back of my hand. I'm going to take my lobster claw, and I'm going to pinch my 4 fingers here, not hard, but just a little bit. And then I'm going to bend my hand back just a little so that I'm stretching here, but it should never hurt. And I'm going to count to 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now I'm going to bend it the other way. So I'm going to tilt my hand down so that I can kind of see my fingers as well as the palm of my hand. And now we're going to stretch this part of our arm. Same thing, take my lobster claw, and I'm going to bend it slightly so that I feel the stretch, but not so that it's hurting. Again, count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then repeat on your other arm, and then give them a shake before we get started. Now we're going to get into the very first part of our sequence. When you're watching this video, you can follow along and pretend that I'm your mirror. So we're going to start off by bringing our arms straight up. They're going to kind of look like a mummy from the side. It looks like this from the front. So again, we're going to come up, and then once they're about the height of my shoulders, then you're going to turn your hands up, and then your hands are you're going to lead with your pinkies, and they're going to come down and turn back up again, and then you're going to turn almost like you're pushing out, and then they're going to come back down. So putting it all together, your arms are going to come up, flip, turn, and push, and down. If you line up these movements with your breathing, you can think of it like this. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, turn, push, and down. Again. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, turn, push, and down. Moving on to our second movement sequence, the timing is going to be the same, so you can inhale on the first part and then exhale on the last part. So this one is going to be to the side. Instead of the first sequence was straight forward, we're going to be moving our arms to the side. So on the inhale, you're going to bring your arms up. So inhale, 2, 3, then flip, and then as you exhale, you're going to push and push again. One more time. Inhale, 2, 3, flip, exhale, push, push. And now we're going to do it on the other side. So inhale, 2, 3, flip, exhale, push, push. Let's try it again. Inhale, 2, 3, flip, exhale, push, push. Great. So let's try it 2 times on this side, and then we're going to do it 2 times on this side. Remember to breathe. Ready? Inhale, 2, 3, then flip, exhale, push, push. One more time. Inhale, 2, 3, flip, exhale, push, push. Good. Now let's do it on the other side. Inhale, 2, 3, flip, exhale, push, push. One more time. Inhale, 2, 3, flip, exhale, push, push. Great. In the silong Sagaling music that I have prepared for today, there's a speed change. So the beginning of the music is a little slower, and then it gets a little faster. So right when that change happens, you'll hear it. It'll all of a sudden go a little faster, and that's when we're going to do this third sequence. But we're only going to do it for a short amount of time. So we're going to start with our hands here because we just did the exhale push. And so it's pretty simple. We're going to come diagonal down, then up, and down, and up, down, up, down, up. So the down and up are the directions that your arms are going. And every time your arms get there, you want to make sure that you're extended and your wrists are going to flick a little bit. So when they come down, they're going to flick at the end. And when they come up, they're going to flick. Down, flick, up, flick. Down, flick, up, flick. Practice the sequences as many times as you need to be able to get the movements as fluid as possible. Now, I'm going to show you what it looks like with the music, both with the slower tempo as well as the faster tempo. I'm going to be doing all three sequences, and so pay attention to how many times I do each one.
Finally, let's take a look at a recipe for menudo, led by Nola.
Welcome back, everyone. So today we're making Filipino style menudo. Most recipes use relatively the same ingredients, which is tomatoes, potatoes, onions, carrots, garlic, and a type of meat. Ours for today is going to be a pork shoulder, and we have relatively simple ingredients like soy sauce, olive oil, black pepper, salt, and garbanzo beans. All right, let's get started. A little bit of knife action for you guys. We're gonna peel and chop up some carrots, potatoes, and tomatoes. I didn't feature this on camera, but we also need to chop up some onion and bell pepper. I taught us how to do that in the videos prior, so instead I'm just gonna take time to talk about it here and set aside our seasonings like garlic, olive oil, and soy sauce. Heat the pan and get our saute started. So it's our garlic, our onions, olive oil, fresh herbs like oregano and basil, coriander, pepper, and then after it gets soft, we add in our meat and some water. We let that simmer a bit and then go in with our tomatoes. So top it off with our bell peppers, our potatoes, and our carrots, and then just a smidge of our soy sauce and some organic no salt seasoning. I set a timer about 30 minutes at this point, make sure I mix it all good, and then get my tomato sauce ready. Now what sets our recipe apart is adding some tomato sauce for a touch of sweetness. Mexican recipes typically add hot chilies. I added a little bit of red pepper because I do like a touch of spice, but that's totally optional. You mix it in and wait it for about a half an hour. And in the meantime, I should clean up. As I'm cleaning up, I decided to share some fun facts with you. So the Mexican-style menudo uses tripe and hot chilies. Ours is a little bit more on the sweeter side with our tomato sauce. Some people add hot dogs, raisins. We're adding garbanzo beans to our mix. Last but not least, we're gonna garnish it with some freshly cracked black pepper. We mix it all together, let it simmer some more, and we know when it's ready to enjoy once our potatoes and carrots are nice and tender. And finally, I get to sit down and enjoy it as I meal. Until next time, everyone, thanks so much for watching. Bye!